Hey, I'm Chase, and today we're talking about the Vudu 1-6 and the Vudu 1-10. Specs, use cases, and why you'll probably just end up wanting both. Let's go grab the 1-10 and we'll talk about these optics. So we'll start here with the 1-6. First off, let's dig into some specs. Overall, this is a 10.63-inch optic, and it is a 30-millimeter tube, so it's going to fit your 30-millimeter mounts. Here we've got this in an ADM mount. It's got, as I said, the 1-6 range of magnification. So on one, it's going to be very similar to what you're used to with a holographic sight or a red dot. And it's going to be very quick acquisition, and it's going to give you a pretty wide field of view with the 24-millimeter objective lens. And then, of course, you can crank this up to 6 power. It's going to give you a great amount of zoom so you can see stuff far off and make those accurate shots. At 1 power, you've got a 3.27-inch eye box, and at 6, you've got a 3.23-inch eye box. So what that means is that's the distance that you can have from your eyeball to the ocular lens. And that's a pretty generous eye box for an LPVO. It's going to let you have a little bit more play in where you put your head behind the optic, especially if you're making those quick shots. You're sort of snapping the rifle up and breaking rounds. This optic weighs right about 20 ounces, and it's going to fit in, like I said, any 30-millimeter mount. It does run off of the very common 2032 watch battery, and this is an illuminated reticle with multiple brightness settings. And when we've been out there on the range, tested this thing, even in pretty direct sunlight, it's definitely going to be very visible, which is not something you get in every LPVO, and so that's definitely a nice feature. The reticle in this is the SR3, and that is going to run the classic EOTech donut of death. So that's the circle and the 1 MOA dot. What I really like about that is that when you have this all the way on 1X, it's super fast, and even when you dial it in with that 1 MOA center point, it's a super refined point of aim, which again isn't something you see in every LPVO, and that can really matter when you have to take those very precise shots. Otherwise, the reticle does have ranging options for 5.56. That's what it's calibrated for. And you can check out the EOTech website for all the different reticle options. They have a ton of reticles, and they got a lot of options there for you, depending on what platform, what caliber, all that good stuff. We have this on a 10.5, and that may seem a little short for an LPVO, but honestly, this has so many features, and it's such a fast optic on one that it works really well on a nice light rifle like this. So you can absolutely use this for close range stuff, getting behind the gun super quick, or if you want to just go ahead, slap it on a hasty rest and take those extended range shots, it's going to work really well. This does have half MOA adjustments on the turrets, and these are locking turrets as well, which is nice because with a first focal plane optic, which both of these are, you don't really need to dial too much. So you're going to get your zero and then just use your holds based on the BDC of the reticle to make those shots when you're making wind or elevation calls, and that's a really nice thing. All right, the 1-10. Let's talk about it. This is also 10.63 overall length and is 23 ounces, so just slightly heavier for that extra range of magnification. It's got a 24-millimeter objective lens and a 34-millimeter tube. Again, that's going to fit in most of your 34-millimeter mounts, obviously, and again, we have it mounted with an ADM mount. This does have 2.25 MOA turrets, and that's nice because when you're talking about a 1-10, most likely your use case is not going to be an AR in 5.56, especially a shorter AR. It's probably going to be a larger caliber, something in 30 cal or bigger, and it's nice to be able to really dial in those fine adjustments on your zero, or if you actually want to dial when you're shooting. However, you don't need to because this is a first focal plane optic and has a variety of reticles. So it does have the MRAD as an option, which is neat. You can check that out on their website. It's got basically that old classic Christmas tree of adjustments and holds so that you can do wind and elevation holds on the fly. And that's a really nice thing, especially when you're talking about stretching out longer ranges where you've got some pretty serious time between you break your shot and when that shot lands. And having these different reticles really allows you to choose exactly the kind you want to use for your style of shooting, what you're shooting at, all that kind of stuff, so you can make those quick, accurate follow-up shots. Overall, this also has a illuminated reticle, runs off the 2032 battery with multiple brightness levels, and just like the 1-6, it is absolutely daylight bright, We have not run into any lighting conditions yet where it got washed out. And one of the things, which you don't see this in a lot of 1 to 10s, but when you get up on the gun, it is super fast. This is very clear glass. I'm not going to say it's holographic sight fast, but it's pretty close. So if you were pressing this into service where you were forced to take a close shot, all of a sudden at 1 power, this is definitely going to do pretty well for you. It is a little bit heavier than the 1 to 6, like we said, but that is kind of be expected because it's got some extra glass in there and it's got that extra magnification range. So we've gone over some basic specs for these optics, but let's talk about their actual use cases. Use cases. Why are you buying an LPVO and what are you using it on? Hey, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So 1 to 6 is typically what you're going to see on a 5.56 AR pattern rifle. And whatever barrel length you're running, as long as you're not going like probably below 10.5, this is going to be a pretty useful optic. With barrel design and bullet technology these days, you really can reach out surprisingly far with a 5.56 gun, even with shorter barrels. And that's where these LPVOs are really coming in handy because they are super fast at 1 power. And like I said, when you're going out farther, you can get that magnification to really ID your target and make those accurate shots. And a 1 to 10, super useful on your larger caliber rifles. Now, I'm not saying you can't use it on a 5.56. Perhaps you've got a 18, 20, 22-inch barrel, DMR, something like that, where you may be varminting. That would be a great option for this, but if you're going to be getting into that 30 cal and above, larger calibers, but perhaps your weapon isn't as big as some of those other calibers have typically been seen in, something like this 16-inch setup, where it's still a small enough gun and a light enough gun that you can use it in a variety of maybe closer range situations, carry it on longer distances, you know, that walking around hunting kind of thing, or if you're maybe patrolling with it in that DMR sort of role, this is going to be another great option. So that's your classic use case. But the nice thing about the way EOTech designs their products is you can kind of do what you want with it. You know, ultimately, EOTech is here to provide solutions for you and your use case, what gun you want to use it on. We've talked specs. We've talked average use cases. You're probably asking yourself, which one do I need? The easy answer is both. Buy them all. They're awesome. However, if, like many people, money is a real thing to you, then you may have to make that discerning purchasing choice. I feel for you, and that's why I'm here to answer that question. Which one do you need? Ultimately, it's going to determine where you live and what you're doing with your gun, and probably what gun you're putting it on. So let's recap. If you're going larger calibers, extended ranges, 1 to 10 is probably going to serve you best. It's going to give you a lot of flexibility, still allow some rapid up-close shots if you need to, but really give you that excellent magnification and light transfer to see in all kinds of shooting conditions and really reach out and touch stuff. If you're going on a 5.56, 300 blackout, 7.62 by 3.9, something like that, on a smaller platform, probably 16-inch or even 14.5 or shorter, this is going to be a great option for you. It's a little bit lighter. It's definitely going to give you that super fast 1 power, and it'll still give you enough magnification at 6x to go ahead and reach out to the realistic ranges that the calibers and barrel length that this optic is most likely going to be used on can achieve anyway. Ultimately, guys, these are great optics. You're not going to go wrong, whichever one you pick up. If you have more questions, you can definitely check out EOTech's website. There's a host of information there. You get all your questions answered. Check them out on social media. They'll give you all kinds of ideas on who's using these optics, what guns are being run on, and they'll always get right back to you if you got any questions. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.